Hello, students. Basically, this video is for Lab 4 Part 2. One of the questions that we are supposed to discuss for this lab is the third question, which is basically the password checker. I will start by designing the flowchart as usual, and then we'll look at how to create the code from the flowchart that we have. All right. So for this, I'm using the Draw.io tool. It is available. The link for this, you can find it on Moodle under the resources section. And once you have it open, you're supposed to create a blank diagram, name it, save it wherever you want to save it. And then this is the screen that will show up. I've just added the question here as text, so we can read while we're creating the flowchart. And just make sure once this screen is open, you have to pick the flowchart section, which is below here. If I can scroll down, this is the section you are supposed to pick. It has all the components that you require for creating a flowchart. So what I'll do basically is I'll just collapse this one and expand the flowchart section. All right. So if you remember from the flowchart, like the components of a flowchart, your flowchart that you design for a program always needs to have a start and an end. All right. So the start of the application and the end of the application are demonstrated using the terminator component of the flowchart. If you hover over it, it shows you the name, if you can see it there. So I would just use the terminator and write start. Okay, and that indicates the start of my program. Now, if we read the program, it says, write your own password checker program. Take in the password, which is in string format, as input from the command line. The command line literally means just take it from the user. All right. So I've indicated the start. Now we need to create, data structures that will be used for storing the data. So we need to probably create, because we're taking an input, you must know that we probably require scanner object, because we're storing a string, like the password in the string format, we might need a string object, and we might need one variable for storing the actual correct password, and probably one for storing the last digits. I think it's best if we read the question first. It says, write your own password checker program. Take in the password string format as input from the command line. Check if the password is correct against a correct password, which is of this format, and you have to save it as a constant. If the password is correct, the user is prompted to enter the last digits of his or her phone number. Now, it's not stated in the question, but if you look at the question on Moodle, the correct answer for that password, for the phone number, is 1234. All right, so that again, we probably will store it as a final, as a constant. And then the next thing it says is, if this is also correct, the user sees the message, you have gained access to the system. If the password is correct, but the phone number is incorrect, the user sees the message, your phone number is incorrect. And if the password is incorrect, the user only sees the message, your password is incorrect, as before. Because this is an extended, like this question is basically extending one of the questions we did in the previous labs, if you remember. Okay, so now we need to decide on what data is required for the application, right? So data is basically any variable or any object that you create in your program. That is what you need to figure out. So in this case, we know we're going to declare and create. The first thing is scanner. Okay. The second thing is string user pass, and then final, or you can write string correct pass constant. Okay, and so we have one for taking the password. So the scanner is basically for the input. String user password will be for storing the password the user gives you, and then string correct pass constant is basically the constant for storing the actual correct password. Now, if you read on the question, we also need to prompt the user for the for a phone number, right? And it should be the last four digits of the phone number. So basically, a phone number has numbers in it, right? So we require int user phone to store the phone number of the user that the user gives us, and then int correct phone constant, which will actually store the correct phone number that needs that the user needs to enter. Okay, so we're done with the data. First thing we need is the scanner for input. So this basically the declare and create phrase is applicable to each one of them. So it literally means declare and create scanner, declare and create string user pass, and so on. Okay, so we're done with that. Now, how about we look at the next thing. So we're supposed to take in the password from the user. That means we need to prompt the user. We need to prompt the user and tell them what they're supposed to provide us, right? And that is basically an action. So we will add it as a process right below this one. And whenever there's a prompt, you're supposed to also have read and assign. So if I write it this way, prompt user for password, I have to also write read password from user and then assign input to user pass variable. Okay, so whenever you write in a process prompt, you also need to write read and assign, because the whole process of prompting is basically asking the user, like displaying to the user what they need to enter, reading that from the user and assigning it to a variable so that it is stored in the program. Okay, now once this is done, you're supposed to now check. So anywhere in a question, when you see the word if, like in the question, if any sentence has the word if, it instantly means that you're supposed to have a decision in your program. Okay, so in this case, the first statement is check if the password is correct. So for that, I would just use a decision. I'll just put it here so we can read at the same time. If user pass is equal to correct pass. Okay, and for all decisions, we need a question mark. So if user pass is equal to correct pass, that is the decision we're going to make. Now, what happens if it is actually correct? So let's look at the process that needs to be done. Okay, let's look at first the process that needs to be done if it was incorrect. So if the password was not the same as the correct password, what should happen is what we will look at now. So let's read the question. And if you notice, it says, if the password is incorrect, the user only sees the message, your password is incorrect. So in this case, where this condition becomes false, all I need to do is print your password is incorrect. And that's it. All right. But what happens if the password was correct? Let's read about that. So if the password is correct, you need to prompt the user to enter the last four digits of his or her phone number. Now, again, we need to do prompt. So whenever we do prompt, we are supposed to have read and assign. So let's keep that in mind. and connect this here. Make sure we mention it as true. Always, whenever you have a decision, make sure you always have the true branch and the false branch. All right, and make sure you always name it. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense what happened, what path is followed in which case. Okay, so here I'm going to prompt user for phone number. Then the second is read whatever you're prompting, which is phone number from user, and then assign input to user phone. Now, why did I call it user phone? Because that's what I declared it here. If user phone is the same as sorry, if the variable that is used for storing the user's phone number is basically user phone here. Now here in the if condition or the decision, if user pass is equal to correct pass, the correct pass is basically the constant which stores the correct password, and user pass is basically the string that stores the password we got from the user. Okay. Now we're done with the prompting. The next thing we need to do is, if this is also correct, the user sees the message, you have gained access to the system. So basically, if this turns out to be correct, there should be another decision. Actually, after this process, there should be another decision. We need to check if whatever the user gave us as the phone number, is it the same as the one we stored as the correct phone number. So again, I'll connect it here. Notice I didn't connect it here because this is for true and then this is for false. Otherwise, it becomes very confusing. So if um, the user phone, which is used for storing the phone number, is equal to correct phone. Okay, because that's what I've named it here, correct phone constant. If it is same, what should happen is what we will look at. So if the password is correct, no, if this is also correct, the user should see you have gained access to the system. So here I'll probably just create another process, and because I'm right now trying to create a branch for true, if the user phone number was the same as the correct phone number, it should basically just print you have gained access to the system. Okay, now if it was false, it should tell me that your phone number is incorrect as stated by the question. So if I look at again at the question, it says but the phone number is incorrect. The user sees the message, your phone number is incorrect. So print your phone number is incorrect. Okay, and this is with the false branch, which means if the numbers were not the same. So this is false. Now we forgot to join them. So that's the one thing we'll do now is all your components need to be connected. Okay. Um, so, okay. Now, if you notice these three are not connected, that's because we need to connect them to the end. Okay. So I'll just write end, and this one gets connected to the end. Okay. And then this one also gets connected to the end. Okay. And then this one is left. This one we also need to connect it to the end. Okay, so notice that now everything is basically connected. Okay, this will be your flowchart for the question. Now, once we're done with the flowchart, we have to follow it so we can create the code. Okay, and that is what we will do in the next half of the video. Okay, So in this part of the video, we will create the program in NetBeans using the flowchart that we have created. All right, so now if we look at this flowchart, the first thing, as soon as your program starts, it needs to have these data or these structures basically created in your program. All right, so basically, if I create a program, I've actually copied the question here. I need all the data, uh, I can call it data structures in code. Okay, I need to create those. That's the first thing we will do. Now, again, going back, so which means we'll create the scanner, we'll create user pass, we'll create correct pass, user phone, correct phone, and those are the things we'll create. Now, after that, we have to prompt user for password, right? So that's the next thing we will do. I'm just creating comments so it's easier for us to write code and we don't have to go back and forth to the flowchart. All right, so I'll prompt user for password, and that includes read and assign. Okay, now once we're done with that, we're supposed to, let's go back and see what we're supposed to do. So once we're done with the prompting user for password, we're supposed to check if the user pass is equal to the correct password that we have. So basically, this is where your decision comes in. So check if user pass is equal to correct pass. Okay, that's what we're supposed to do. Sorry, that's what we're supposed to check. And then if true, let's start. Okay, so if true, what should happen? If it is true, we should prompt uh, user for phone number. Okay, but if it was false, if false, we're supposed to basically print your password is correct. So this is what we're coding right now. So if the user password was the same as the correct password, we need to prompt user for the number. If it was false, then we're supposed to print to the user your password is incorrect. So that's what I'll do here. Print password incorrect. Okay, so we're done with the check. Now, again, if the if the password was correct and we're actually prompting, in that case, we're supposed to again check if the user phone number was the same as the correct phone number, right? So if it was true and we prompted user for the password for the phone number, we need to check if phone number is correct. All right, and if phone is correct, we're supposed to basically print. So if the phone number was the same as the correct phone number, we're supposed to print you have gained access to the system. Otherwise, we're supposed to print your phone number is incorrect. And that should be it. Okay, so let me go back. And if the phone number is, now notice I'm writing it right after, if right after prompting the user for the phone number. That's because that's where the check should happen, right? So if the phone number is correct, then you print you have gained access to system. Okay, and then if it is incorrect, if you're not supposed to do, like, you're not supposed to add all of these comments. It's just I'm doing it because it will make it easier for us to code. And you know, it you don't have to go back and forth to the diagram all the time. So if phone number is incorrect, basically you're supposed to print phone number, your phone number is incorrect. Okay, now Yeah, now let's start coding this. One by one, we look at the comments and see what we're supposed to basically add. So for the first comment, we're supposed to add data structures in the code, which means I need a scanner object for reading input. So I'll name it input is equal to new scanner system dot in, and that should be my scanner. Now it's giving me an error because let's see why. It says if I hover over it, it says cannot find symbol. And for that, I can literally just, because I forgot to import java.util.scanner. So if you forget to import it, it's fine. You can just import it this way, or literally you can just go and type it here this way. Now we have the input for this, like the scanner for reading input. The next thing we need is two constants. For making a variable a constant, we use the final keyword. And the first variable we have is string correct pass. Okay, and this stores the correct password, which is here. I'll just copy it from here and paste it here. Okay, now the second one that we have is final int correct phone. And if you look at the question, if you look at the question on Moodle, the correct phone number there is basically 1234. Okay, and that's what I'm going to add it here. Now these are both constants. Now we need two variables for basically storing the user's input. For that, we'll have string user pass, okay, and then int user phone. And that's exactly what we added in our diagram. We had a scanner object, correct pass, correct phone, user pass, user phone. And if I go back here, that's what we had here. Scanner, user pass, user phone, correct phone. Okay. Now we're done with that part. Now we're supposed to prompt the user for the password. In here, I can literally write, please enter your password. Okay. And that would mean this will get displayed to the user and then the user will enter it. Now, for reading it, we would use input dot, because that's the name of the scanner object here. So input dot next. And because we want to only read one word, I would just use next. Next line is when you have multiple words. Okay. Now this code is basically what you use to read for the input that the user gives you. Now, in order to store that input, you need to assign it to the variable that you created for the user pass. Okay, so it's literally user pass is equal to input dot next, and that means you've actually prompted the user, read the input, and assigned it to the variable that you created. Now, the next thing is check if user pass is equal to correct pass, which means there is a correct pass and then there's a correct pass and then there's a user pass, and we need to check if they're both equal to if they're both the same. Now if you can literally you would imagine coding it this way, but this is not the correct way. Why? Because strings, you cannot compare strings using the equal to symbol. For that, the string object has a method called dot equals to, and that is what we will use. Even if you write it this way, and you see here, it gives you this icon. It tells you please use equals or use equals, invert if, on all of these things. I would say just click on use equals. What happens is basically this is a method. So you have a string, right? The first thing is you would write that string. You would use the dot operator. Remember, the string is a class. That's why we're able to use the dot operator. So with the dot operator, you would get equals method. Okay, if I can write it again, so we can look at the example from the documentation. See, here it says compares. Now this is the equals method. Okay, it takes another object. In this case, it can be a string, and it compares this string to the specified object. So whatever this string is will be compared to whatever you're going to pass, and it will figure out if they're the same or not. Okay, so I'll just use this and correct pass. So basically, use it. The equals method will check if user pass is the same as correct pass. Now, the thing with this is Java is basically case sensitive, right? So if you had two words like hello and then hello, Java considers them differently. But in reality, the word is the same, right? So this is what makes the check very difficult, because you only need to check if the word is the same. You don't care if it's written this way or if it's written this way or if it's written this way. You just want to know if the word is the same. In that case, how would you do? How would you check that? For that, we have something called equals ignore case, which means it doesn't consider the characters in the word, uh, like it doesn't consider the case of the characters in the word, which means it doesn't consider if the characters are small letter, capital letter. It just looks at the fact that if the word is the same. All right. This is why we cannot compare two strings using the equal to symbol, because it becomes very difficult when you want to check the case, right? How would you check? Because Java is case sensitive, it wouldn't consider it the same word. Now, why did we not use equals ignore case for the password? Because if the password is hello, then if you write it this way, it should consider it as a wrong password, right? So in this case, we're just plainly going to use equals. Okay, now we're done with that. Now here, for all the true parts, I'm going to move it within the true section, and the else has, sorry, the else should have the false part where you actually just print your password is incorrect, which I'll just copy from here and paste it here. So basically what happens is if this condition was true, all of this will get executed. Otherwise, this will get executed, which means if the passwords are not the same, this part will get executed. Otherwise, whatever you write here will get executed. Now, if it is true, which is here in the block that we are in, if it is true, prompt user for phone number. Again, prompt should happen using print line, right? So I would prompt the user saying, it's not given here, so I'll just say enter for last four digits of phone number. Okay, and then I have to read it. For reading it, I will use input.next. Now, because phone number is integer, right? So for that, we'll use something called next int. And if you remember, we need to store it for the user. So we will use user phone is equal to input dot next int. Now check if phone number is correct. Now again, I need to check if whatever the user gave me was correct. Now here I can use the equal to symbol because it's integer, right? So if user phone number is the same as correct phone, then something should happen. If it is correct, you should print gained access to the system. Okay, so here I can literally copy this from here. So I'll just print it out here. Okay, and then in the else section, you're supposed to so in the else section, you're supposed to print your phone number is incorrect. Because if the phone number match, only then you have to print you have gained access. Otherwise, you have to print your phone number is incorrect, which I'll copy again from here. Okay, and paste it here. Okay, now if we try to run this, let's see what happens. It says, please enter your password. If I enter any random password, it should give me your password is incorrect, which happened. Now, here, if I pick the actual correct password and run it again and paste it here, now because the password was correct, it's asking me for the last 4 digits of the phone number. And so if I enter, let's say 2222, it will say that your phone number is incorrect. But if I add the actual password, actual phone number, it should tell me that you have gained access to the system. All right, so this is basically how you would code. It's very, very helpful if you create the flowchart, because that kind of shows you how to actually code. If your design is correct, your code is going to be correct. If your design is not there or is incorrect, then your code will also affect, and that means the quality or um, the quality of your code will suffer, or you'll take a lot of time to create the code. All right, so I think that's it for this video. We've successfully created the flowchart for Lab 4. One of the questions, I think it's the third question from Lab 4 Part 2, and we've created the code for it as well.